How's your day today? Alex here. I have just written, before starting this video, some simple code, and I want to execute it in front of you. Actually, hold on. Execute, just so you know, execute means run the code. So I want to run this code, and I want to show you what it does. What happened there? Well, what happened there is an error. An error is a thing that happened in the code that shouldn't happen. There are three types of errors. There is the compile error, the runtime error, and the logic error. Now, anytime you code, if you get an error, you're hoping for this one, as it's the easiest to debug. If you get this one, well, good luck with that. And if you get this one, prepare to cry. Because trust me, I've gotten this one a few times, and yeah. So I want to use this video to go into depth in each of the three errors. So the first one is, as you saw there, it didn't work. See? It's not working. This is a compiler error, and it prevents the code from running. You will not be able to run the code until you fix this. Now, in the case that you do get a compile error, it's also sometimes called compiler error, usually you can debug it pretty easily. First off, most IDEs, or the thing that you type C++ in, or other coding languages, has a section where it will display all the errors. For instance, here, I have one error which says syntax error. Now, a syntax error means that something's gone wrong here, and that there's something that shouldn't be there. So that's a syntax error. It'll tell me the file that it's in, and the line, and the project. So, let's look at the code. Now, most IDEs will also highlight errors with squiggly lines to show what's going wrong. So, the syntax error is obviously pointing to this one. So if I delete this, now everything should work fine. See? Now this is the most basic syntax error. So now I'm going to show you the next one, which is the runtime error. Okay, so I've typed in some new code, and for those who have either watched this video already or has a very good understanding of C++, I bet you can already see what's about to go wrong. Well, this is a runtime error. A runtime error will be caused because of this. Now, a runtime error is actually special because there are two types. One is where it gives you an error, which I do not know how to produce randomly. But the other one I'm going to show you, which is where it actually makes a logic error. So a runtime error, when you get a runtime error, you're hoping for this, because then it's easily fixable. If you get this, well, depending on how complicated your code is, it'll be hard to debug. So I'll just explain the logic error. The logic error is where no error is produced. However, the code does something different. This is the simplest example of a logic error. It is usually because of the user, but it can also be sometimes because of you. Now the logic error, now the runtime error, there's also a second version, which is what I'm showing you here. It is what I call the user input error, where the user breaks the code. This is where the user does something they're not supposed to do. Like here. Here I ask the user to enter a number, and that will be added to num2, and when num2 is greater than 10, the code will stop. And it worked completely fine. So if I enter something like, I don't know, 3, then we get 4 highs. But if the user was naughty and entered something that is 0, even though I clearly state not to, well, look at that scroll bar go. Yeah, so you want to avoid this at all costs. The best way is to use if statements. So here we can do it if num1 is greater than 0. We'll just control X and control V. And obviously if it's not, then you put an else statement, but I'm too lazy. Ha ha ha. So now, if I enter something like 0, the code immediately quits. Yeah, cool. So that's how you usually deal with them. It's kind of hard to deal with logic errors, but user input errors are easy. On the other hand, we have logic errors, which is where it's not the user's fault that your code breaks. For instance, if I'm careless and accidentally here set num1 to equal 0, what do you think is gonna happen? So if a good user now uses this, what will happen is they'll put in 1 and oh, you're supposed to only show 10 highs, not a million. The reason for this is because I accidentally did something I shouldn't do. Now there are different ways to debug a logic error, but the best way I've found is just to go through your code where you think the error is, and then just find out what the computer's doing, and then I'll see, aha, I've caught you. And there you go. So those are the 4 errors. I know before I said only 3, but those are the 4 errors. Compiler error, which is where before you can even test the code, it automatically breaks because nothing can happen. A runtime error, which can appear in different things. It can just throw an error at you. It can be where the user breaks the code by doing something they shouldn't do, and or a logic error, which is where you accidentally added something that doesn't necessarily break the code, but makes the code not work as it's supposed to. Most of the time you'll run into compiler errors and logic errors, and if you're making anything which has user input, you'll run into user input errors. I have rarely ran into errors from runtime errors. But yeah, that should be all the errors. So subscribe to me if you want to see more coding videos. If you're more into gaming videos, however, I have those too. If you like this, press the like button, and I'll see you on the next video.